I'm going to be installing a bushing kit into my 2015 Wildcat Sport. I picked up a bushing kit from AJ's Side-by-Sides, parts, accessories, and whatever he calls it. So we'll see what all comes in it. Invoice, paraphernalia. Man, you gotta love it when you get paraphernalia. Sleeves, because I'm doing a sport, you gotta change out the sleeves. Yeah, it looks like bushings, washers, lots of sleeves. Cool. Stickers. Man, look at there. Sticker for the toolbox. Just what I need. Another one. Okay, I'm going to start on the rear, mostly because it's a little bit easier to do than the front. So, get some experience with knocking the old bushings out and putting the new bushings in, and do that on the rear where it's there's a little bit less stuff to move out of the way. I'm going to start by taking out the lower shock bolt. It's a 15mm wrench and 13mm socket. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the bolt out of the top of the knuckle. Again, it's a 15mm wrench. I'm using a 13mm socket. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is take out the top bolt of the upper A-arm. It's going to be a 13mm socket and a 15mm wrench. Okay, to get the lower A-arm off, the first thing I'm going to do is loosen up the brake line clips. I use a T25. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the bolt out of the sway bar. I'm going to use a 10mm wrench, 13mm socket. Next, I'm going to take off the bolt out of the lower knuckle. 13mm socket, 15mm wrench. And then finally the two bolts that bolt the lower A-arm to the frame. Back when I'll use a 15mm wrench and a 13mm socket. Same thing on the front bolt. That'll be a 13mm socket and a 15mm wrench. Alright, now we have both A-arms off. We can knock the old bushings out and start installing the new bushings. Okay, we're going to remove the old bushings out right now. When you pull your A-arms off, more than likely these dust caps are going to fall off, but you'll have a dust cap on either end. So we'll take those and remove those. They'll get discarded and not used again. One thing I've just figured out is that if you'll find the split in the original bushing, like this one's got, the split is right here. Anyway, if you'll find that split and work it with your punch from there, it'll come out pretty easy. So, see, I worked it from the split right where that was, and it kind of helped dislodge it, and it came out pretty easy. I'll show you guys another way that I found that's actually, for me, ended up being easier to get these bushings out. You find the split in the bushing, and then knock it in. Once you get both sides knocked in, you can just kind of run down where the split is. They really come out, pretty easy. Okay, I actually went through all the parts that came in the box, kind of just took an inventory of what I had. He actually has all this stuff laid out pretty well. This bag says WCS, which I'm going to assume is Wildcat Sport, lower rear A-arms, rear knuckles. So that's going to be where the lower rear A-arm mounts to the frame, and then all the bushings for the rear knuckles. This bag is WCS, top, front, and rear, and lower front. So those will be the bushings for the top A-arms, front and back, and then the front A-arm on the lower front A-arm. The washers, you don't use the dust caps, so the washers go on the outside of the bushings. Because it's a Wildcat Sport kit, I get new sleeves. There's 8 of these. These are labeled sleeve suspension. Those are going to be for the knuckles and the lower rear A-arms where they mount to the frame. 4 of these, which is a sleeve front upper suspension. That's actually going to be where both the front A-arms mount to the frame, front and back. And then you get one long one, which is sleeve front lower suspension, and that one's going to be for the front lower A-arm. It'll all be fairly self-explanatory. Like I said, really pretty decent kit, not bad at all. Another thing you want to be sure and do before you install the new bushings is to clean out the old A-arms where the old bushings were at. It'll just make the installation of the new bushings easier. So I'm just going to use a Dremel tool and a wire brush on the end of it and just run through here and clean these out. And even though that won't get all the way into when you do the long, where the long sleeve go, it won't get all the way into the sleeve all the way to clean it out, but it'll clean it out plenty far enough for where you're going to have your bushings go in. Okay, bushings, you may have to lubricate these. Mine apparently you're not going to have to. They went in very easily. Hell, even that one went in pretty good. Okay, well there you go. Sleeves are bushings are installed. I'll finish up the other one. That's the way we'll do all of the bushings on all the A-arms where they mount to the frame. Okay, I was hoping I could knock these bushings out with the knuckles still attached to the car. Probably the reality is if you want to wrestle with it, you probably can. For the sake of this, I'm going to take the whole axle and knuckle off, because I'll wrestle with these bushings, fighting them off with it on the car before I'll jack with breaking this axle nut loose. I think this is the one side of my car that hasn't been apart, so that thing is just a whipping. So I'm going to take off the caliper. This is a 10mm socket. Now I'm just going to remove the whole axle and knuckle assembly, the whole thing, and just take it over to the bench. If you don't know how to remove an axle, I've got a video online you can search for that more than shows you how to do it. Okay, so now I've got the entire hub, knuckle, and axle assembly, the whole thing on the bench. And we'll just knock these bushings out. There's the old sleeve. And like I said, I'm going to try and find the split in the bushing somewhere. Right there. And I'll work on it from that side. Okay, and it's out. Okay, I've managed to cuss my way through getting all the bushings out of the knuckle and getting them cleaned up. So we'll put the new bushings in. Actually go in fairly well. Alright, time to reinstall everything. Okay, now that we have all the bushings in, time to start putting it back together. So we're going to need lots of washers. And we're going to need the new sleeves. And we're going to need some anti-seize. And we're going to need some Loctite. Alright, so we're going to start putting stuff back together. One thing I've done is I've got all the bushings in. One of the guys on the forum had mentioned putting some anti-seize on the bolts for like a lubricant. Sounded good to me, and I had some laying around, so I did it. I know that when I pulled them apart, the grease that was on it had pretty well hardened up. Gonna get washers on the end of Of each bushing, you're not going to use the original end caps. Fuck. Yeah, fucking sleeves would help. So in the lower A-arm, you're going to put 2 sleeves in there, and they're just labeled sleeve suspension. It's a 0403-250. And we'll put one in the other end. Same part number sleeve. If you have a dead blow hammer or something like that, brass hammer, probably better. I'm just too lazy to get up and get the right one. It's a good snug fit though. Okay, I got both lower bolts in. This one was pretty easy. This one was a challenge, we'll say. We'll put some Loctite on the threads. Run the bolts, nuts on there. Okay, both of these torque down to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, we can put the sway bar bolt back in. This uses a 10 on the bolt side and a 13 on the nut side. I'm not using any Loctite on that because it's got a aircraft nut on it, nylon lock nut. But it does torque down to 20 foot-pounds. Okay, now that we have all that, we can put the axle and the knuckle back in. Again, if you don't know how to do that part, if this is the way you choose to do it, then I've got a video on how to mess with the axles, how to pull them in and out. Knuckle's going to get two sleeves, the same size, 0403-250 sleeve suspension. I guess I'll get up and get the right kind of hammer. Okay, washer and a bolt. Alright, now that we've got this bolt in here, we'll put a little bit of Loctite on it. And it will torque down to 35 foot-pounds. Alright, I'll finish tapping this sleeve in. All that looks pretty good. Put the upper A-arm on. The upper A-arm is going to get a sleeve, part number 0403-305, sleeve front upper suspension, even though it's on the rear. Alrighty. Little blue Loctite on this one. Alright, that torques down to 35 foot-pounds as well. Okay, next is put the upper A-arm back onto the knuckle. Some blue Loctite. .40 foot-pounds. All we have left is to put the caliper back on. Some blue Loctite on these. Okay, finished new bushings. Oh, damn it. The brake caliper, the brake line back on. That's a T25, tighten that down. Okay, now we're done. New bushings installed all the way around. The other side is the exact same process. There's really absolutely nothing different about the other side. So I'll finish up that side and then we'll move over to the front and we'll do it. One problem I did run into on the passenger side, everything else looks like it's going to be the same, but I did run into the upper bolt for the upper A-arm runs into the shift linkage. So it's a 19 millimeter wrench. Just loosen that off. Slide that out of the way. And then that bolt will come right out. And then I can go about removing the A-arm.